Now, just to give you an idea of how ridiculous this avoidance of focus can be, I spent a lot of my youth, my 20s and even a lot of my 30s too, going to many meetings, classes, workshops, seminars, spending time with people who had all sorts of different levels of success, not just financially, but in their relationships, in their vocation, their careers, in their chosen passions, hobbies, skills. And one of the categories that I was in one of these seminars was learning how to open up the third eye, the pineal gland. And that's a big topic at the moment, getting out of your body and opening up that cosmic star dish that's in the center of your brain so you can travel between dimensions, at least in your awareness, and gain new information from dimensions that are unseen. Now, to be able to do this in the workshops we were doing, we were in training for about 4 days. Now, I'm not saying it takes, from a starting, still takes 4 days to learn this, although you could do it depending on what prior knowledge you have and practice you have. But it took 4 days for us to get the body and mind aligned and the emotions aligned, and to be able to access the states of consciousness, to be able to release the certain chemicals into the brain that would have these hallucinogenic effects. All right, so this is like a natural process of releasing DMT into the brain so you can have these out-of-body experiences. And it's all just through breath work and meditation and a lot of understanding about what's happening on the internal processes. Now, once you've learned this skill and you've practiced at it, you can access it any time you like, right? It doesn't take 4 days to get into that state and release those chemicals in the brain. It may take, hours, it may take a couple of days. Depends on your level of skill of being able to focus your intention and induce these states naturally. But, even people that were attending these workshops, do you think that they would continue their practice outside of these events? Not many people would. There was a group within the group that would do it, but a lot of people just dropped off. And, they'd either never go back to it, or, they try and rearrange their life pretending that they've had this experience but they don't need to do it anymore. Or they would start to, use devices, i.e. drugs, to be able to access these states, which means you're just dependent on an external source to do what your brain and body can do naturally with a bit of training. And so here's the point of all this, is that most people will sacrifice owning a skill which doesn't require anything from anyone to reproduce repeatedly for the rest of their life, which is going to have an effect on how they perceive reality, what they have access to in their world, and the levels of success, for lack of a better term, that they will have access to. They're willing to trade all that in to, become dependent on some person outside of them supplying a device to them on their terms, when they can, on their conditions that they're dependent on and have to adhere to, rather than just focus their attention long enough on a skill to cultivate a skill and embody it, and to be ruler of all that you survey in your internal world. And you know, I get frustrated at this because it's not like you can't do it. It's just most people don't, right? There was that joke in the movie with The Rock and Kevin Hart where he's like, "Oh, look at you, you're so big. How did you get so big?" You know, they knew each other as kids in this story. And he's like, "Well, you know, I just went to the gym and I worked out 6 hours a day for 6 days a week for 20 years. I mean, anyone can do it, right?" And he's right, anyone can do it, but it takes a lot of dedication and commitment to rearrange your life, to make the time, and to keep showing up day after day after day for all that time. But in the end, if we looked at, you know, the Rock's body as a metaphor for focus, look at how strong the focus is on that person. You know, there's not a lot they can't do in terms of, you know, moving their world around. And so one of the keys to getting focused is a regular pattern of showing up and practicing, no matter whether you think you're doing it right or wrong, but just to focus on focusing, right? And eventually the secrets will reveal themselves to you. And to take your time with it, right? Because it's not something that you're gonna learn and then you've got it and that's it. You know, you never have to practice focusing anymore. Because like with fitness, the stronger and fitter you get, you know, the stronger and fitter you can become. And so it's a matter of developing habits and a regime where you can keep showing up and keep going back and keep refining and adding and subtracting certain practices, exercises, depending on your level, to strengthen your ability to focus. Now, I remember listening to a teacher one time, and she said, "I don't care who you are, how old you are, whether you're a man or you're a woman, where you come from. The only thing I care about in this process is your ability to focus and participate." Right? So it's something you can't just intellectualize about either and think about it, you know, make calculations and then all of a sudden you focus. You have to practice and participate in the exercise of focusing. And one of the most simplest exercises that I've ever come across. And once you understand the principle, you can apply this to anything. You can make up your own practices that suit you, that don't distract you from your life, that integrate into your life. And one of those is candle focus, right? Simply sitting still, lighting a candle, and focusing on the flame. And what it does is it trains the brain in convergent and divergent focus. In other words, holding your focus on a point in time and space, being the candle, and allowing your awareness to become expanded and go into the periphery at the same time. Now, the samurais in the movie The Last Samurai call this no mind, but it's not actually no mind. It's a relaxed state of mind that is hyper alert. And what happens in this state is that you're actually processing information at an extremely rapid rate. So fast, in fact, that you can't consciously keep up with what your brain is doing unconsciously. But because your consciousness is resting on the process, it's actually, it's like turbocharging it. It's kind of like, you know, the new Dark Star aircraft going from a conventional jet engine that takes off and lands to when it gets up to hypersonic speed, you know, the scramjets kick in and or the ramjets kick in and they take over, and then you can go even faster. And so this is where we come to stories again from the samurai, where they are able to draw their sword and split a bullet in half that's being fired towards their direction. And when you think about this, you can't actually think about doing it, because by the time the trigger is pulled and the projectile comes out of the barrel of the gun and it travels across space and time to meet your proximity, and you draw your sword and then you have it in line with the vector of the projectile, and then finally the sword intercepts the bullet and the bullet splits. All that happens so quickly that it happens faster than the information can reach the eyes of the swordsman, go into the brain, process it, and send the signals into the body to act. So this all happens beyond a time-space perspective. And you can't do that consciously. It's like you can't think about, cleaning the toxins from your blood with your kidneys and actively do it. It's something that just happens. It's an automatic process. It's part of the autonomic, it's hooked into the autonomic nervous system. And this also comes into, areas like situational awareness. So if anyone's seen the Jason Bourne series, I think it's The Bourne Identity, he and Marie are sitting in the diner, and he doesn't know who he is, but he has all these abilities that he knows how to do things, but he doesn't know how he knows how to do them. And he's like, why do I know that I can run 1.5 miles at full speed before my hands start to shake? And why is it that I know that the guy sitting on the stool 3 from the left knows how to handle himself, and it's the most likely place to find a weapon is behind the bar, which will probably be a shotgun, or in the truck out the back there? And how come when I walk into a place, I'm scanning all the exits and the angles? And so that all happens like without him thinking about it, because it's trained into him, right? And these are the things that you can do with focus. Once you have focus fitness, you can start to train the unconscious mind to do tasks for you that consciously you can't do. One of it was like, well, what can I do in my day-to-day life? Well, what about when you increase your focus, you can detect changes in micro behaviors in people's mannerisms. And when you know what to look for, you can see whether someone is being honest and authentic with you, or whether they're full of shit and they're lying to your face. Do you think that skill would be useful to you? Now, I know many people, and myself included, who've been in a situation where if I knew that a person was lying to me instead of telling me what I thought I wanted to hear, then I probably wouldn't have made certain decisions that I made that led me to certain outcomes, and I would have been able to avoid all sorts of things. Having said that, though, they were lessons in life to be able to lead me, give me contrast, so I knew what I wanted to change. Now that I know what I wanted to change, to do that, to access the deeper parts of the mind, I needed to learn how to focus. So, there's a lot in this video. I've skipped across a lot of stuff. I do that a lot. My style is unconventional. I jump around, I move around, I open up loops, I engage in metaphors, I go into deeper loops, I link them all together, I throw in suggestions, I make mistakes in my language that if you go back and look at them, they're not actually mistakes at all. There's a lot of subtext going on in what I talk about. So if you've made it this far and this is interesting to you, then maybe you'll find other videos that I've done interesting too, and maybe you'll comment on them and like them and share them so the algorithm can push them out to other people that you think may be interested in this type of stuff. And when you do that, it's a good thing, because when you're engaging in these practices, it's all very internal, it's all very personal. And although everyone's doing it in their own way, in their own pace, for their own reasons and their own destinations and outcomes, it's nice to know that you know other people who are engaging in this type of practice too, because it's not something you can visibly see at first in people. People who are actually doing this and are really good at it, you probably wouldn't even detect that they are good at this stuff. You wouldn't even know what to look for. So when this information gets delivered to you from a place of, to you, maybe is unknown, well, you don't know how it's going to be presented and in what format. Because if you were aware and you could detect it, your critical mind might interrupt the process and reject it, or you'd already be doing it and you already know, you'd already be up to speed with what we're talking about. So thanks for your attention, thanks for listening, thanks for focusing on this video of learning how to focus. And I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks and bye for now.